Hello again and welcome to Handmade in Chelsea Online. And right now we are being joined by Hollie Cooper, who is another ceramicist, and she's going to be taking us through some of her processes and techniques she used to create her bright and decorative pieces. So over to you, Hollie.
Hi, thanks for coming on to the live. It's my first live, so bear with me. But I'm basically going to be taking you through the process of making my angular bars. So these are the vases that I make. Each one is hand casted. So I'm basically going to be explaining the process of slip casting, and then each one is hand painted. And these are actually going to be available on my exhibitor profile. So you'll be able to customise your own piece based on some colour options. So basically, slip casting is a method of ceramics. It's traditionally used and it goes back quite a long time. So I'm going to just show you how the process is made through making a mould. So initially, on the plaster lathe, I've made this mould, and it would be that way, I suppose, if it was on the lathe, and then like a wood lathe, you carve into it and make your shape. Then from this model, once it's been sawed off, you would then make your mould. So the mould is basically like a negative of this form. So with slip casting, rather than using clay as you know it, you're using a liquid clay, so it's called a casting slip, and basically it's just like all the same properties of clay, but it's just got an added element into it so that it can deal with drying out and not being brittle, so that it doesn't break once it's dried out in the mould. So in the mould, like I said, it's a negative form from this mould, from this model. So when you pour in the liquid slip, the porosity of the plaster just extracts all of that water content out of the clay and basically makes like a bit of a shell, if you will, inside. So it's kind of like making a chocolate egg, I think. So it's basically just extracting all of that clay right to the outside of the piece, and the longer you leave it in, the longer, the thicker the piece will be. So I usually use it in for about 10 minutes. So that's why I'm going to be showing you the process through using a different mould. So I'm going to pour in the liquid slip. So make sure you can see it. So you just pour it in, and then once it's all poured, you just want to make sure there's no air bubbles. And then I would leave that for about 10 minutes. So obviously, because it's about a 15-minute live, I'm not gonna let you wait for ages just while that's working its thing. So like Blue Peter style, I have pre-prepared my vase. So I'm going to show you basically the method of how I would then take it out of the mold. So each mold basically has a reservoir on the top. So as you can see on the model, I've made it so that there's this lip, and then in the cast, you will see, I think if you can see it, I'm then going to trim off the excess that the lips cause. And that basically just means that the rim of the piece is completely uniform, it's all the same thickness, and it's not thinner than the rest of the piece. So I'm going to show you now, just open it up.
So we have a quick question.
Yes.
How many parts are there to your mold?
For this mold, there's 3 parts. So, like on my model, basically, I don't know whether you can see it because I'm really tiny on the screen, but there's like a pencil line which I've made, which is basically the central line of the model. So when I make the mold, I make sure that it's central and I've got 2 halves to my model. So that just means that basically it's not going to get stuck in the cast, because there wouldn't be like an undercut, if you will. So there's 2 halves on either side, and then there's a separate base. So I'm just going to pull it back a bit so you can see it. And then I'm just going to trim off this excess, which is really satisfying. I always love this part.
That does look satisfying.
Literally. There's a lot to do with ceramics that's so satisfying. So take those off. That just means that when I take the piece out of the mold, I don't have to do that afterwards. So basically still I've got my line here so that I know that it's going to come out. Sorry, frog in my throat. So I know it's going to come out perfectly straight at the top. It's not going to be wonky. So just get all that out. So it's nice and neat. And then I'm going to basically lift the two halves off of the base. And I'm going to put it on its side, so one of the sides. And then lift off one of the halves. There we go.
Wow, that's really beautiful. It's like perfect.
I always love this part. And then take it out, and voila, there's the finished piece. Well, not finished, but you get the drift. So here's, as soon as it comes out of the mold, so basically because, like I say, there's two halves of the mold, there's generally a line on each side, and each piece just needs trimming up, just neatening down.
Wonderful.
So at this point, just usually use a nice smooth tool, and I just go down each part, just trimming off all that excess. This part I don't usually try to make it perfect, it's still soft clay, and whatever you do, you're always going to make marks in it. So I usually just do what I can and make it neat.
Yeah.
And then I put it in for its first bisque firing once it's fully dry. And so the bisque firing goes into about 1,000 degrees in the kiln, and that just makes it so that it's changed the form from a raw clay to a fired clay, and it makes it so it's less fragile but still porous enough so that I can add glaze to it. So at that point I would then sand it down, get rid of all of any lumps and bumps, smooth it down to a soft fine polish. So I'm just going to take all these bits off.
And roughly how long would you say it takes you to make a single piece from start?
Well, with slip casting, a lot of the time, it depends on how many molds you've got. So at the moment, for my vase, I've got one mold, but I could have replicas of that mold, and I could say pour 5 at one time or 10 at one time.
Right.
And so in a lot of ways, the process, I'd say, at the moment, when I'm leaving it in the mold, before I take it out of the mold, it takes about a day because it's quite cold in the studio.
Okay.
But if it was in summer and it were a lot warmer, I might be able to get it out in the same day. And in a lot of ways, it's also dependent on different types of clays.
Okay.
So sometimes with like porcelain or Parian, it's dependent on the clay, of course. It can dry out quicker, so you can get it out quicker.
Right, right.
So yeah, that's why I did it yesterday, because it would have just been stuck in there.
Right. And so you mainly work with porcelain?
No, this is a stoneware clay.
Okay.
So I quite like the properties of stoneware, and you can get different types. And a lot of the time when I throw in the wheel, I actually use a stoneware that has flecks in it. So this one doesn't have flecks in it, but when I'm throwing on the wheel, I tend to use one which is quite flecky, and that just basically means that when it's fired at the full firing, at the full temperature, when it comes out, all those flecks reveal, and it's a really lovely finish. I did try recreating that with slip casting, but because it's a liquid slip, basically the flecks in the clay are like say like little particles, and so with a slip they just drain to the bottom, and so yeah, it's best to use, in my experience, just a nice smooth stoneware clay, and I find it really reliable as well. With a lot of porcelains or Parians in the kiln, they can tend to warp, and so you can use like little setters, which would basically be like if I had a little like dish to put it in, if you will, so that it doesn't stretch in the kiln, basically.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, I do really enjoy stoneware because it's really reliable and it doesn't tend to warp the same.
So now, what would be the next process that you do from
So
here?
now, what I would be doing with this piece is once I've finished knitting it all off, I would then leave it to dry. So I've got a couple of dry ones here.
Yeah.
So you can see the colour change in the two.
Yeah,
So this one's completely dry, and that one's ready for the kiln now. So I pop it in the kiln for its first bisque firing, like I say, 1,000 degrees. And then when it comes out, I usually polish them all down. So I've got these polishing pads. They're called like diamond pads, and you can use them for different materials as well, but they work really great with ceramics. And I get different grades so that I can, start with a bit more rough and then end with a really fine polish. So I'd say each piece takes about 10 minutes or so to fully sand down and polish. And then once I've done that, because basically when you're sanding it, you have to do it wet. So the piece has to be wet and the sanding paper has to be wet. When the piece is wet, I can't glaze it because it's not porous. So then it has to dry again, and then I hand paint them. So I've got some here that are ready for the kiln, ready for the final firing. These are ones that I painted yesterday. So this one, for example, it's the loop design, which is going to be available on my exhibitor profile. And this one has been custom made, and the customer chose a flame orange and a blush. So it's a really, really nice colour combination. Beautiful. Really lovely. And I've got one here, which is intense yellow and coral. And the colours are underglazes. It's basically like a ceramic paint, if you will. Okay. And when fired, they do slightly change colour, but not really too drastically. It's more like they pop more. They're a lot brighter. So those are these ones. What time am I on?
You've got about just under just 3 minutes left, but carry on. I know you have some more stuff to show us, so we would like to see.
Well, what I'll do, I'll just move this boy out of the way and knock him over. Reach. What I'll do is I've got some pieces over here. These are made in the same process. These are my lamps. So I've only recently launched them, and for Handmade in Britain, this is the first time that they have ever been available to buy. So it's really exciting. I can't wait.
And can you tell us quickly about the prices as well, so we know? Of
course, yeah. So each one of these pieces is £160, and each one comes ready fitted with the fabric cable. And they are also, so these basically are also made in the slip casting process. And then at the end, I add a cork base. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it now.
So that's basically just because I don't want them to scratch surfaces on the, on your furniture and your wooden furniture like ceramic occasionally does. So I also really like combinations of materials. And I love the contrast between the cork. So I might just blind you all here. I love the combination between the glazed ceramic and the raw cork. Really adds a little touch, I think. So yes, those are 160. Currently, each of these pieces, they're all one-off, so these are the only pieces I have of each. But I will be making more, and
Okay.
you can customize them. So later today, I'll be making an option so that you can customize a lamp, and same with the vases. Sorry, I'm losing track of thought. And then here I've got my lower cost items. I've got soap dishes. These
Oh,
are thrown on the
lovely.
wheel. So that's the flecked clay I was explaining. Might not be able to see it on the video. And then I've got some ring cone dishes that are a new product.
Oh, so what are they for, sorry?
These are ring cone dishes. So basically, I've made it so that in the middle, you can stack your rings on. Make sure you can see.
I see, lovely.
And then around the edges, it's great for a little trinket dish. So, you know, like
Yeah.
your favorite things, your favorite earrings, your loveliest rings that you want proudly on display. And then finally, I've got an incense dish
Lovely.
for some incense sticks. So I really love having pieces that are functional and usable, but also is like a little mini piece of art within your home.
Of course, definitely. And the prices for the vases, sorry, I forgot to ask you earlier.
Sorry.
The
Oh, sorry,
prices for
yeah.
the vases.
The vases, they're £50, and
Okay.
all of the options on the exhibitor profile, they're all customizable. So I've made some options on there with
Yeah.
color options, and you can choose between them and see which ones you prefer. So like these ones, they're customized pieces. Like
Wonderful.
so.
All right. Thank you so much, Holly. That was brilliant. Thank you for actually taking us through the whole demonstration and like showing us step by step as well from start to finish. So thank you for that. That was brilliant.